Someone who is interested in you is not going to give room for you to have doubts that they're interested in you because they're interested in you. And they are going to do things that make sense with showing their interest. Good morning. Good morning. How are we all doing, guys? Welcome back to the pod if you are a loyal listener. And if you are new here, welcome. My name is Chantel Russo, and this is the Sage Sorority Podcast. The Sage Sorority drops new episodes every Thursday, so please consider subscribing, share this episode with a friend, and of course, leave us a cheeky comment and a 5-star review. So believe it or not, January is the most popular month for getting on dating apps. Most dating apps, your Tinder, your Hinge, your Bumble, etc., report much higher numbers of activity in the month of January. And January is also a very high month in terms of splitsville for couples. So divorces and separations usually peak in January compared to the rest of the year. I think people are just in a New Year's vibe, new year, new me. I want to start the year fresh. So I'm either going to get on these apps and ideally find the love of my life or the flavor of the month. And I think for separations and divorces, it's like, okay, Christmas is over, New Year's is over, family obligations are done. It's time to start the new year fresh, and I think we should part ways. I sometimes will get plugged or nudged, emailed, or commented about dating advice in some way, shape, or form. And I'm very, very specific. If you follow me on other platforms, this is something I've kind of alluded to before, and I think I've said it on the podcast, but I'm very specific about the type of dating relationship content that I put out. Most of it I find to be very low vibrational. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I just mean that it often doesn't feel helpful. It often doesn't feel educational. It doesn't really feel like a light bulb moment for me most of the time. And I also feel like everything has also been said, right? So I always just try and come from the angle with that content specifically of, do I really feel like I have something interesting and or helpful to say? Now, not everyone thinks like that, but that's just kind of how I feel when it comes to TikToks and short form video content, specifically when it comes to dating. People are really just out there shooting from the hip. And there's a reason why. People love dating content. They eat it up. And it is a very easy way to gain numbers, gain traction, and maybe even go viral. I don't think it's the best virality in my opinion, but it is something to be said. So I'm just very cautious with it. I think also I'm in my 30s. And being married is something that I want for myself. And I do think that marriage is sacred. I think good relationships are important, whether they're intimate or not. And I just think that there's so many nuances and so many caveats to relationships that it's really hard to sum it all up in 60 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever, right? And that's also okay because not every thought needs to give nuance and texture to every unique situation because that's annoying and that's just not realistic. But I say all that to say, my personal theory is that as a woman in this day and age, the only dating advice that you need is when you don't like what's being served to you, you walk away. That is it. That is my theory. You guys know I like to say low-key theory, high-key fact. That is it. All other advice in dating truly stems from that core idea. If you don't like what is happening, what is being said, what is being given, how you're being touched, etc., you need to move on. No, that doesn't mean people are disposable. No, that does not excuse your lack of communication, but it is something at which all other advice stems from. And if you find dating advice in general overwhelming, or even if you forget everything else I've ever said, that is your alpha and omega. And like I said earlier, does that make people disposable? Absolutely not. But what it does do is it keeps your needs, your wants, your desires, and your self-respect intact. And truthfully, nothing is more important than that in dating and relationships. I know that for some of you, that may sound a little too simple, like that's it, that's the advice, that's the rub. But honestly, just stay with me because I think we've been so buried in like dating content and strategies and how to and games and attachment styles that I do think sometimes we overcomplicate things, and we overcomplicate things that actually should be very instinctive. So the reason why I think that this is really good advice, I think it's really evergreen advice for both women and men, but especially for women, is because women are conditioned and socialized to not do that. We have to think about what we are often taught, and what we are taught from our peers, from our parents, from teachers, from TV, from media. From when we are young, the messaging is to be nice, be patient, don't be hasty, be a lady, give men a chance, boys will be boys. Maybe he just needs time. Maybe he's just intimidated by your XYZ. He's probably just going through a rough time. And all of those things could be true. Of course, they could be true. But like I often say, that would be the exception to the rule. And for your own sanity, you should consider that you are not. Here's a real example. You're dating someone and he takes 3 days to reply to your text. 3 days. And instead of going, okay, this isn't working for me, I don't like that, what do women often do? You start building a case for him. Maybe he's busy. You go on his Instagram. Oh, he hasn't posted any stories. Maybe he is just really busy. Well, maybe he had a hard weekend. Maybe he's had a tough week. Maybe he's just not a phone person. You know what? I do know that his job is really stressful. It's like, absolutely the fuck not. Someone who is interested in you is not going to give room for you to have doubts that they're interested in you because they're interested in you. And they are going to do things that make sense with showing their interest. And then furthermore, if he is in fact not a phone person, you should be checking in with yourself. Does that work for you? Are you a phone person? Do you want to be with someone that takes 3 days to respond to your text? No? Then that's all you need to know. It actually doesn't matter if he's not a phone person. It doesn't matter if he's had a stressful week at work. None of that matters because you want to be with someone who's not going to take 3 business days to respond to you. No fluff, texture, nuance, or group chat deep dives required. Here's another example. Think about a man that you've dated in the past who's done the whole hot and cold thing with you. 1 week, he's all in, like he's on you like a rash, texting, making plans, telling you how much he likes you, where he sees this going. And then he disappears, goes quiet, there's a shift, becomes a different person. And then when he does come back around, instead of clocking the pattern and calling him out on it, we get relieved. You're like, okay, good. Like he's back. This version of him is back. You know, we can just forget about that weird little moment and keep going. And unfortunately, in situations like that are all too common, you start measuring the relationship by the best moments instead of really the average ones, the median ones, AKA the ones that happen more often than not. And you hold on to who he is at, let's say, 10%, and ignore who he is the other 90%. And I say all of that to say, like, this is what it has in common. We've been taught that our role in dating as women, in a lot of ways, and in very insidious ways, might I add, is that our job is to endure, to wait it out, to be understanding, to be kind, to be patient. What does 1 Corinthians say? Love is patient, love is kind. You see where I'm going. To give chance after chance because that is what a good woman does. That is what a good girlfriend does. That is what a good wife does, etc., etc. But I really believe that over the course of the hundreds of years that this has been crammed down our throat, we learned that leaving early is impatient. You're doing too much. You're being dramatic. You want perfection. So we stay, we analyze, and then we all judge each other into the same thing. The group chats, the girl chats, the 3-way phone calls, all of it. We make excuses. And bit by bit, you abandon yourself in the process. In the name of what? To have what on the other end? To have a warm bed? To have a boyfriend? To have someone in your life? To have a husband? What if your skill, your trait, the knowledge or whatever isn't learning how to stay and figure him out? Like, what if that is not the point? What if that is not your role? What if your role and your job is to learn how to notice when shit is not sweet and something isn't right, and then leave before you have completely abandoned yourself and lost yourself in the process of trying to fix it? So when we talk about walking away, what does that actually mean? So when I say walking away, I don't mean blowing up his phone. I don't mean sending long paragraphs about how he's hurt you. And I also don't mean creating and asking and having ultimatums. I mean, it's something very simple and very to the point. You just opt out. Like early and swiftly. No performance, no begging, no tears, no needing to also justify it to anyone, including yourself. You do not have to rationalize and A/B check your decisions to walk away from something. Now, the criteria in which you will choose to walk away when you're way more in depth with someone will be different than in the beginning. But I really want to harp on the beginning because I actually think this is where the majority of people get it wrong, right? Because it's, that age-old quote, a leopard doesn't change its spots. And even though it's very simple, there's a lot of truth to it. You know who you're with, right? For the most part, people change. And if we're talking about a relationship that has evolved over years or decades, it's obviously very different. But let's bring it back to the beginning. I'm talking about the first several dates, the first month of dating, the first 6 months. You're still early days with someone, right? If they are the one in the course of your life or the course of the average maybe lifespan in a relationship, 20 years, let's say, you're still very early days. When you notice behavior, speech, language, actions, touch, whatever that you do not like, there's 2 ways to go about it. You're going to address it if it's something that's worth addressing and behavior that can be curbed, or if it's just flat out disrespect and you're like, I don't want to be with someone or spend time with someone who believes that this is an acceptable way to treat me. But when you make the decision to leave, you have to be mature enough to make the decision to leave on your own. It can't be that you make the decision to leave and then you expel all your emotion onto him in hopes that he will then bring you back in. That is not someone who has made the decision to leave. That is someone looking for a cosign, and that doesn't work. It also chips away at your self-confidence and your self-respect. For example, if you're early days with a guy and he cancels on you twice, you don't need to have a conversation about it. You don't need to message him. You don't need a long text message or a lengthy voice note. You don't need to ask, is everything okay? No, you just stop being available. Leave him alone, let it go, archive the chat, and move on with your life. When I did my 50 first dates, I obviously met a lot of people, a lot of interesting characters. But at the time, I had a lot of girlfriends who were on dating apps as well, and they were dating a lot. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast. I think I did a long time ago, where I was having dinner with a friend and we were talking about our dating experiences. And she was showing me a text thread between her and this guy over the span of a year, where for 5 of her messages, he would respond to maybe 1. And sometimes when he wouldn't respond, she would send him like follow-up messages. And honestly, guys, it made me so sad and I died a little inside because this is not the way and it's also not necessary. If you do get a man under those kind of circumstances, I can pretty much guarantee you are not going to be happy. You do not need to chase someone. You do not need to chase someone. You should not chase someone. And after you chase them and you get them, it's not going to feel good. It's just not. You don't need a reason beyond this doesn't feel good to me. That is enough to walk away from someone else. On the flip side, when it comes to men and dating, no one ever requires men to justify why they don't want to talk to a girl anymore. I just don't. Like, she's not my type, or she's not for me, or it's just not going to work out. And no one really challenges that and says, but why? She's such a nice person. We don't expect men to date women just because a woman is nice. Yet, that is something crammed down every woman's throat at any given time in her life. He's such a nice guy. Give him a try. Give him a shot. Why? Let's not even talk about being disrespected, a man not respecting your boundaries, him just generally being unkind, not being chivalrous, not being a gentleman. Let's just put all that aside. Why do we have to simply date someone just because he's there, essentially? It's like we're taught that we have to build some strong legal case before we're allowed to leave. We need enough evidence, we need enough reasons, we need enough bad behavior to justify our exit. But my sweet angel baby, you are not a prosecutor. And this is not a courtroom. You are a woman who deserves to feel good in her intimate relationships. Full stop. That is the end of the sentence. And the moment that you don't, that is all the information you need. That is your cue. That is your moment. Now, of course, we have to talk about what happens when we don't walk away. And every woman has been there, staying in a situation a little bit longer or a lot longer than you should. But when we don't walk away early, when we override those gut feelings, this is what happens. We start abandoning ourselves in small ways, bit by bit, chip by chip. We stop saying that what we actually want, and we begin to pretend and then convince ourselves while trying to convince others that we are okay with situations that we're not okay with. We water down our needs and call ourselves chill when really you're not chill. You're just eliminating your own comfort for the sake of the relationship and for the sake of his. Not to mention the insane mental load. There's the overthinking, hours spent analyzing what he meant. Does he care about you? Energy poured into figuring him out instead of just noticing how you feel around him, how you feel after you see him, how you feel when he's not there, how you feel when you're waiting for him to text you back. If you're spending more time trying to decode him, decode the relationship, make him happy, than actually enjoying him in the relationship, that is not a connection. And then the big one. You fall for his potential. Not who he actually is in real life, every day, day to day, but who you believe he could be. If he just got it together, if he just stopped his drinking, if he just went to therapy, if he just got a better job, if he just had a less stressful job, if he just realized what he had. You're not dating that man that's in front of you, which isn't fair to him and it's not fair to you. You're dating a version of him that does not exist. You're dating a version of him that you've created in your head. When you hold on to who a man is at 10% and you build an entire relationship around a man who only shows up part-time, who is left holding the balance? And how does the vacancy of that make you feel? Ultimately, this is really about discernment. You know, my favorite word, the ability to see clearly and choose accordingly, not based on what you hope is going to happen, not based on who you hope he might become, but based on what is actually in front of you right now. And when you look at a situation and you just say, this isn't what I want, and you walk away without guilt, that is agency. That is soft power. That is not about him choosing you. That is about you choosing yourself. And my dear, sweet girl, you have to always choose yourself. Whether you're married, whether you're in a relationship, you have to always choose yourself. And just because you're choosing yourself doesn't necessarily mean you are making a choice that harms others. You guys, I know that you're smart enough to read between the lines, but I just want to emphasize that. But your ability to choose is the power. Unfortunately, women are so socialized to spend a lot of energy in trying to be chosen. But have you ever considered that you are also doing the choosing? And the real flex, the real power in a woman, especially under patriarchy, is being able to walk away from someone who isn't choosing you properly. So I know that some of this may have come off a little harsh and abrupt, but I'm telling you, just like I would tell you if we were sitting in front of each other, I'm not telling you to become cold, guarded, or bitter. That's not it. People are imperfect. Relationships require dedication, commitment, and ideally joyful work. There will be hard conversations and rough patches and moments where you choose to stay and work through it. 1000%. But there is a clear difference between working through something with someone who's showing up and trying to build something with someone who is not. And only you know which one you're in. And only you will only know which one you're in and how all of it makes you feel. Walking away from someone does not make you a bitch. It makes you loyal and honest to yourself. And it makes you someone who can trust her own intuition and her own experience. No one is in the relationship like you are. Therefore, no one can really tell you what it feels like. At the end of the day, when you don't like what's being served, let's say at a restaurant, you send it back. And if you don't like the service on top of that, maybe you leave. You don't just sit there hungry, hoping that the menu is going to change. I hope that this makes sense. I know there's someone out there that needed to hear it. I know that we're in our January New Year, New Me era. And for a lot of us, that means dating. And I wanted to give you guys my little nugget of ideally high vibrational, soft power advice before you get out there. And it's also for my girlies that are married, in relationships. Make sure you're choosing yourself and you're choosing the healthiest version of what the both of you need. And sometimes the healthiest version of what you both need is walking away. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I love you guys so much. You guys know where to find me on all platforms at The Sage Sorority or at Chantel Russo. Please share this episode with a friend who's in her dating era. This is some really good advice that I'm sure could be very helpful. I will talk to you guys next week. I love you so much. Have an amazing week and an amazing weekend. Bye.